play out and getting to cover them from a, just the broadcasting side of things.
Well,
what do you love about it?
It's part of my DNA growing up, and I'm fortunate to be able to do it for a living and to see the passion of the fans and to see how it's not just them rooting for a team. It's sort of part of their identity. And I know that can go overboard and not be the greatest thing at times, but it's also what makes college football special. And to know what it means. I mean, I was flying up here this morning and I was in Charlotte making my connection, and people are yelling OHIO, and call and response kind of thing. And a couple of Michigan fans, not as many of them, but a couple of Michigan fans, looked almost visibly ill, when they heard someone say OH. And so that's sort of the way these things work. Hang on a minute, my room service is here. I got to go get that. I'll be right back.
No problem.
Hey, how are you?
Good, how are you doing?
I'm doing great. Thank you. All right, thanks. All right, sorry about that.
No worries.
Yeah. So, but I think I just love the passion of it. It's been something that I've loved since I was 5 years old, and to be able to experience it and broadcast from it and sort of try to frame the day and frame the surroundings of the game and hopefully give some insight to what's going to happen is really cool. It's a lot of fun.
And how does this rivalry compare to others that you've covered?
Everybody thinks theirs is the worst, right? Everybody thinks theirs is the toughest and the meanest and the nastiest, and we hate our rival more than you hate your rival. But I think the thing that has distinguished this one over the years, as evidenced by the number of times they've met when both were in the top five, is not only is it vitriolic and not only is it for bragging rights, but it also has had huge tangible stakes attached to it more often than not. Now, there was certainly a long stretch where Michigan didn't quite hold up its end of the bargain in that, but last year they certainly did. 2016, though they came up short, they certainly did. So there are, I think the fact that there have been big national stakes in addition to just bragging rights or a conference or whatever sort of makes this one really, really special because, Alabama and Auburn had a run there from, I guess, 09 to 13, where the winner of the game, at the very least, played in the national championship every year. Both Alabama won 3, Auburn won 1, lost 1. And, so that was pretty high stakes, but then Auburn fell off a cliff. Neither of these teams, even if Michigan took a step back and, they did for a while in the 2000s, but you never really got the feeling that they fell completely off the cliff. Now, maybe they did in this rivalry because, last year ended some pain. But I always feel like that there's a standard of excellence both places that's lived up to, and the stakes are really high. And I think that makes it really special.
Do you have any predictions for what the result tomorrow will be?
They don't ever let me pick on the show, but I'll pick here. I think Ohio State's a better team, but I see a path for Michigan winning, and I think it's the one everyone else sees. If Michigan can control the game from running standpoint, if they can get heat on C.J. Stroud and force him into mistakes, because he's a brilliant quarterback with the best core of receivers in the country. But, Michigan was able to light him up last year, but, Hutchinson and Ojabo aren't walking through that door. Michigan can still get some pressure. They'll need to. If they can do that and they can control the ball by running it, assuming that Corum and or Edwards are healthy enough to be effective, I'm not going to be stunned if Michigan wins the game. But the fact that it's here, the fact that Ohio State really has the revenge/redemption motif working on their side, basically spending the whole year after hearing that they weren't physical enough, they weren't tough enough, hearing that perhaps the head coach was born on third base and thought he hit a triple. All of those things sort of factor into the mental aspect of it. But I think by the time they tee it up tomorrow, that Harbaugh will be right. You'll have a couple of superheroes going at each other, and it'll be a lot of fun.
Awesome. I think somebody else is next in line for a question, so I will pass it over to them. But thank you for your time.
You bet.
Spencer,
Thank you.
You can go ahead.
I think for Michigan, it might be the guys up on the defensive front to see whether they can get pressure. Whether that's Monty Smith, whether it's Oki on the edge, whoever it might be, just someone on the defensive front to get pressure, disrupt, maybe force a mistake there. And a lot of it is running back health too. So can one of the young running backs, whether Michigan has to turn to one of its young running backs, or whether Ohio State has to go back to freshman who was sensational last week and really sort of earned his keep. It seemed like, and Hayden had almost 150 yards and 3 touchdowns. If they have to turn to him, those kind of guys could certainly be an unsung hero and a guy who could have a dramatic impact on the outcome of the game. You bet.
Anything else for Rece?
Quick one. If I could just pick your brain a little bit about the playoff situation right now. Do you think there's a chance for the loser of this one to eke their way into a potential spot in the college football playoff?
I think there's a far better chance for Ohio State with a close loss in a classic game to get in than there is for Michigan.
Mm-hmm.
A couple of reasons for that. If Ohio State were to be the loser of this game, and it were a great game, and clearly that these two teams were unequivocally one of the 4 best, the resume would also back up Ohio State a little better than it would Michigan. Non-conference schedule that everyone's talked about. Ohio State would have the win over Notre Dame, which already is going to look good. Possibly could look even better if Notre Dame were to knock off Southern California Saturday night. And, but I think Michigan would have a much more difficult time because their best win, if you're splitting hairs, would be outside, obviously. Well, in that case, I guess we're talking about Michigan losing here, would be a home win against Penn State. Ohio State beat them on the road. So I think Ohio State has a far better chance to sneak in as a second team from the Big Ten if they lose. But the caveat being, it would have to be a great game. Both teams would have to play really well. Ohio State would have to come up short somehow late, and then I think they would have a chance based on football judgment with a little backing from their resume to be able to get in. I don't really see a path, absent everyone else collapsing around them, that would let Michigan do the same thing. Now, look, if TCU loses to Iowa State and USC loses and Clemson drops the game either to South Carolina or North Carolina, okay, maybe so. But just under normal circumstances, I think it's going to be a far more difficult task for Michigan to get in with a loss than it would be for Ohio State.
Totally. All right. Thank you.
You bet. I don't think they'll lose what they're all about totally, but we're being disingenuous if we say it's not going to take a hit. And I've been saying this for a while. The expansion of the playoff is fine, and I'm for it because the appetite is there. But I'm for it while being a realist of saying that this is going to cost us something. Those of us who love the history of college football. I'm going to talk a lot about this on game day Saturday. This might be the last Michigan-Ohio State game of its kind, meaning high stakes like there was in 06, like there was in 16, like there's going to be tomorrow, like there was for the 73 meeting, even though that ended in a tie. But those are going away because I don't think, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't think the Big Ten has officially announced that it's doing away with divisions, but everybody's been recommended to do so because, for instance, no disrespect intended to Iowa, you don't want Iowa to have a ball bounce off a tuba and, somehow win the Big Ten and get an automatic bid. they haven't earned that over the course of the season. So people are going to go with the top two teams. In this case, that would mean Michigan and Ohio State play again next week. And then, as you pointed out, in a 12-team format, both would be in, and maybe they would play a third week. So rather than building up 365 days and holding those bragging rights, maybe you hold them for 6 or 7 days until you play them again in the conference championship. So there is a price to be paid. Now, does it add importance to some other games for teams that are off the radar trying to fight their way in different parts of the country? Yes, it does. And that's a plus. But the minus is you give up this winner-take-all feel that you've had a few times in the last 15, 20 years in the Michigan-Ohio State game, that you've had in a couple of Alabama-LSU games over the years. That's important. We're the only sport that has that in the regular season. And maybe it is time to move on past it and evolve and expand the playoff. But you have to understand it comes at a cost. And the cost might be that feeling that you have on a Saturday, like we're going to have tomorrow, where your gut's churning because at the end of the day, you either have a chance to reach your ultimate goal or it's all going to be taken away from you based on that one game in the regular season. Some people think that's a bad thing. I think there's a lot of drama to it and there's value to it. It doesn't mean we shouldn't expand the playoff, but I do want people to recognize, embrace, and treasure this opportunity that we've got Saturday to at least have one more of these, because you don't know whether it's Michigan, Ohio State, Bama, LSU, whoever it might be. You're not guaranteed to get another one, before we expand the playoff and change the division structure and all of those types of things. So we ought to enjoy it while we have it and place value on it.
Thanks, Rece. Thanks, everyone. Appreciate your time.
All right, guys. See you later. Have a great weekend.